Hi there. Thanks for joining me here on Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, the founder of Bare Bones Yoga and the creator of the Momentum Magic Method, the way to become a confident teacher, one who effortlessly walks around the room, shares clear cues, easily builds sequences, and speaks from your heart, sharing authentically with your students. Here on the podcast, you'll discover new and inspiring ways to share your cues and create your sequences. You'll uncover habits and frameworks all designed to empower you so that you can teach in a way that feels authentic and natural. For some episodes, I'll have a guest, and other episodes I'll share with you on my own, and in each one, you'll always get action steps and takeaways you can apply right away to your teaching. In addition to the podcast, follow me on Instagram and TikTok for daily videos. You'll see a link on both of my profiles, my Stan Store link. Click it and unlock ways you can get the support you need to be the teacher of your dreams. You'll find links to the podcast, my free ebook, and other resources to help you be the best teacher you can be. You'll also find the link to my signature program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program, and you can see if you qualify to enroll. So with that, let's get on with today's show. Hi there. Welcome to Conversations for Yoga Teachers. I'm your host, Karen Fabian, and this is episode 362. I'm recording this on July 30th, 2025, and this will go live on August 4th, 2025. So we're going to talk today about building a framework. You're going to discover a framework for feeling more confident so that you feel better teaching your classes. I sort of thought twice about using the word better because I don't really know what better means to you, but I think we both agree that feeling confident when you teach your classes feels good. And certainly if you're teaching right now and you don't feel confident, I would guess that you would say, man, if I felt confident, that would make me feel better. So I think that sets the playing field for what we're going to talk about today. Think about when you go in to teach your classes, if you've ever had thoughts like, do they like me? Do they like this class? Is my sequence hard enough, or is my sequence good enough? Or are there enough people in here? Am I meeting whatever standard I've set in my mind for a baseline for how many students I believe I should have in class? Or maybe the studio that I work for has a certain requirement for a number of people that I have per class. You know, all of these things are signs that you're sort of looking outside yourself at things that you really don't have a lot of control over. And this is often a symptom of a lack of confidence. You know, one of the hallmarks of someone who's teaching confidently is they focus on what they can control. And this is really something that doesn't get talked about in teacher training. In fact, what most teachers learn in teacher training is I have to try to kind of mold myself to what people want or what people need. And it's not that it's a message that's stated in a crystal clear way. It's sort of this subtle messaging. I mean, even think about when you went through your 200-hour teacher training and you demo taught for the person leading the training, and then they gave you feedback. Right there is an example of how you began to be indoctrinated into this approach of I teach, someone perceives my teaching, they tell me how they feel, which by the way is just their opinion. And based on how they feel, that makes me feel a certain way about myself and quote unquote how I did. And therefore, I'm going to change certain things about how I teach based on what this person said, especially if I'm denoting to this person a certain level of status or knowledge or expertise in teaching yoga because of who they are in relationship to me, i.e., they're leading the training and I'm a teacher trainee in the training. So now you can start to see how even just that whole process you went through of being quote unquote reviewed or judged, no one's going to call it judging, but that's essentially what it is, by the person leading your 200-hour training, started to indoctrinate you into this mindset that I need to be thinking about how people receive my teaching. And I need to be concerned about that. And I need to try to make that person's perception of me good or better if it's not. And I think that whole premise is completely flawed, because it's based on this idea that you can control how somebody receives your class, and you can't do that. And so all of these attempts to mold yourself into ways to get people's approval is just a sign that you don't feel very confident as a yoga teacher. Because if you did feel confident, you would appreciate that it's not about how they perceive you. It's more about, and I know this might sound backwards, it's it's more about how you perceive you. That's why I often say the most important question you can ask yourself when you're done teaching a yoga class is, how do I feel? How do I feel about that class I just taught? Rather than, do I think they liked it? How many people did I have in class? Did people say something to me after class? I mean, honestly, if I were running a 200, 300, or 500-hour teacher training, but especially if I were running a 200-hour training, I would never do that whole standardized process of teach for me, let me give you feedback. I would never do that. What I would basically do is, let's say there were a group of 10 teachers, I would basically have each teacher teach a portion of the practice. And after they did that, I would simply sit with them, and the other folks would be there. And I would simply say, how do you feel about what you just did? And then that person would say whatever came up for them. I feel like I was really nervous, or I feel like I kept forgetting where I was in the sequence, or I felt really self-conscious. And then I would ask more about that. Well, tell me, how did that make you feel when you were feeling self-conscious? What were the kinds of things that were coming up for you? Oh, well, I started to get lost in the sequence, and I started to feel embarrassed or worried about how people were thinking about me, right? Like, my entire process would flip that other process on its head, because it would be completely designed in understanding more about the teacher's point of view. How were things going from the teacher's point of view when they did their demo teaching? And how can I ask important inquiry questions to help that teacher get to the bottom of identifying how they felt, identifying what's causing them to feel that way? Maybe it's a belief. Maybe it's a story they've held on to for their entire life. Maybe it's a trigger from something that happened to them at another part in their life, and they're being reminded of that feeling when they practice teach. And what are some things that we can ex- collaborate on as ideas for things that this teacher can experiment with in future practice teaching sessions, so that they can change how they feel? Right? Like, that is how you build confident, empowered yoga teachers, not by nitpicking all these things that they're doing. And even if you didn't get nitpicked in this way that I'm describing it, even just the whole process of somebody saying, oh, okay, so you did this right and you did this stuff incorrectly or not up to par, or whatever verbiage they might use, that's just that person's opinion. And it's really not grounded in what I believe makes for confident, empowered teachers, which is, what do you want to do? How do you want to show up? But at the base of all of this is a lack of confidence. And so that's what we're going to talk about. Now, how can we give you a framework so that you can build that feeling of confidence in your mind, in your body, in your brain, so that when you go into teach your classes, you feel confident. I want to make a quick note, because I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the podcaster, I listened to this neuropsychologist on the Mel Robbins podcast and also a different podcast. I can't remember the name of the show. And gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the show. But anyway, what this person who has all the qualifications, a neuropsychologist, so she's got a background in psychology and neuroscience, and she's written a whole bunch of books. And the whole concept of what she was discussing is this distinction between the mind and the brain. And this idea that your brain is almost like a machine that's processing information, and your mind is this set of antenna. Your mind is like radar, sort of feeling the vibe and the energy of what's out there in the world and what you're experiencing. And this really spoke to me from the point of view of teaching yoga, because for a lot of teachers I speak with, even those who have a lot of experience, they've got sort of the neural pathways in the brain to do the teaching, to say the cues, to teach the sequence. But there's this part of them, if we can frame it as the mind, that doesn't feel the way they want to feel. And so I just wanted to share that with you, especially if you're teaching right now and you're feeling like there's different parts of you, and the mind part, maybe you didn't think of it as the mind until now, is what's lacking. And this also speaks to when I talk about the four pillars of high level teaching, I talk about it in terms of cueing, sequencing, understanding the key aspects of anatomy, and mindset. And the mindset piece is what's completely missing in the 200-hour teacher training process, and quite frankly, even in other teacher training programs at the other hour level. And it is critical to being a successful yoga teacher, success however you define it. So this framework of the mind and the brain are separate really speaks to that. You can have all the anatomy knowledge, and you can have knowledge of sequences as you're teaching them and cues as you're sharing them. But if in your head you're judging yourself, or you have imposter syndrome, or you feel really nervous, or you're worried that people are going to get hurt, or you're looking for people's approval, or you identify as being a people pleaser, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have a mindset issue. And so that part of you that is perceiving how you're teaching is always going to overtake any potential level of skill, level of enjoyment that you would get from the brain side. Because when you're not feeling confident, nothing else really matters. That's kind of like this loud noise in your brain when you're teaching. And isn't it kind of amazing how you can teach a class and seemingly be going through the motions of teaching it, but behind the scenes in your head, you're having these intrusive thoughts of, they don't like this. I'm feeling really nervous. I'm worried about this beginner in the front row. Oh my God, this person left early and I feel like it's because they didn't like my class. There can be a whole other narrative going on in your head as you're teaching the class. And I speak from experience. I have, over the years, worked through a whole bunch of limiting beliefs about myself that really ran a lot of the script, the internal script in my mind as I was teaching. And so I've worked through these problems, and it really came from seeking help outside the yoga industry. I worked with a neuroscience coach, and so that was really how I shifted my mindset. And that's in large part what inspires me and inspired me to add a whole mindset component to both my one-on-one program, the Yoga Anatomy Blueprint Learning Program, and my group program, the Yoga Anatomy Accelerator. So both of those programs go into the mindset piece because it is so pivotal for high-level yoga teaching. So I want to walk you through a confidence practice. And this is a 6-step process that I can offer you that can allow you to start to build your confidence. And this is something you could use just in your life. But of course, we're talking about it now in the context of teaching yoga and feeling confident teaching yoga. But I want you to keep in mind, you could use this at any point in your life. And I did have an episode back at the beginning of this year, 2025, where I introduced this, but I've really been sort of massaging it and sort of expanding on it all this year, this first part of the year from January to July 2025, because I've been interviewed on a whole bunch of podcasts where I've talked about confidence. And the interesting thing is these podcasts, a lot of them have nothing to do with yoga teaching. They're really just podcasts out there in the world, specifically specifically speaking to women, especially women who are in their late 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. So I guess what they call midlife. And so I've loved having an opportunity to really tweak this confidence practice framework through those interviews I've done. And I did build a whole page on my website for all the interviews I've done this calendar year so far. 2025, I made a big investment in working with a podcast booking agency, and I've worked with them to get booked on a whole bunch of different shows. And I've loved having a chance to speak on these yoga related shows and these non-yoga shows. And you can see all the links to all those episodes on the page on my website that specifically says podcast appearances. So that's just there for your consumption if you want to dive into it. So let's talk about the confidence practice. And the reason I called it the confidence practice and not the confidence method or the confidence framework is because feeling confident is a practice. It's not something that every day you wake up and you feel 100% confident. It waxes and wanes. We are human beings with, again, a mind and a brain. We can be triggered by different things. You can be triggered as a yoga teacher by this, what seems like the smallest thing can send you into an emotional meltdown. I brought up before that example of someone leaving class early. That's something that can really make you question your confidence. Or maybe you show up to teach in the studio and the class before you has a whole bunch of people and you're standing there watching all these people pile out of the room and you're thinking, why don't I have that many people in my classes? So this idea of confidence, kind of like a battery, like sometimes your battery is full of confidence and sometimes it's low. And so the idea is it's a practice. Every day we wake up and every day we have an opportunity to do things to build up our confidence. Every day we have a chance to create a different narrative to those intrusive thoughts that come in that try to drag us down. And these are really thoughts of the ego. These are really thoughts of that side of our mind that questions our ability, that questions our self-worth, that questions if we're qualified or expert enough to be teaching yoga. So think of this like a wheel on a bike, and in the center of the wheel is confidence, and the spokes on the wheel are these different components. So the first thing is yoga and or movement of any kind, making this part of your everyday experience. We can look at yoga and movement as essential for mobility, cardiovascular health, longevity, mental health. There's so many studies coming out now about the effect of exercise, regular exercise, along with other factors, on decreasing the risk of dementia. So many things we can go into that have to do with the benefit of movement on your biology. And when your biology is positively affected, your mind is positively affected. People don't work out and feel worse after. People almost always feel better. And so that's just evidence of yoga or movement of some kind every single day is step one in this process of keeping your confidence level high. Number two is having a mindset that's willing to experiment with different things. I call it experimentation and also daily challenges. So think about, as a yoga teacher, if you're constantly forgetting different parts of your sequence, and your way to cope with that is to practice with your class. But let's say you don't really want to practice with your class. You really want to be the kind of teacher who can do the walk and talk, but you have this problem of forgetting the sequence. So, would you be willing to just experiment with teaching the same sequence over and over again in service to being able to walk around more? Would you just be willing to try that? And if you said yes, well, great. Then that shows that you are coachable, that you are open minded, and that you're the kind of person who's willing to experiment with different things in your classes in service to you being the kind of yoga teacher you want to be. And I can give you dozens of examples more on that, but for time purposes, we'll keep it just to that one. So think about even in your life, like if you eat the same stuff all the time and at the same time you're complaining of GI issues, or even if you're not complaining of GI issues and you just eat the same stuff all the time, would you be willing to experiment with different things when you go to the grocery store so that you're eating different things at home? What if you go to the same coffee shop every day? Would you be willing to experiment with going to a different coffee shop? What if you hold back from posting on social media for fear of being judged and you decide one day, hey, I'm willing to experiment this week with posting every day on social media as a yoga teacher and sharing a different yoga pose every single day and seeing what happens? So, experimentation is a way to tap into the neuroplasticity of our brain. Our brain changes at the level of the neurons and the synapses between the neurons in response to experience. So, if we do different things, we keep our brain healthy. If we keep our brain healthy, we decrease our risk of different brain problems and brain diseases over time. But also, we demonstrate to ourselves that we are not our thoughts, we are not our limitations. We actually are a higher level human who is open to experimentation in service to seeing if doing something different or going someplace different or trying something different in my classes helps me tap into a greater level of confidence. So that's number two. Number three is self inquiry. And this sort of ties in with journaling every day, but you don't necessarily have to journal to do this step. Self inquiry is just living in a way where you're asking questions rather than just accepting things as they are. You know, the sign of a closed minded type A perfectionist person is they have very rigid thinking. And I'm an expert on that because that's how I used to be. But when I had sort of a full out questioning of whether or not I really wanted to continue, this was many years ago, running my business as I do today, although back then it was different. When I had sort of this full on questioning of should I continue on this in this direction, I had very rigid thoughts about how I should be doing things. And through working with a neuroscience coach, that's when I realized, wow, I'm looking at things in such a closed minded way. There's lots of options I have. And so that process of untangling my attachment to rigid thinking really helped me grow my business, grow my offers, reach more yoga teachers, find more joy and excitement and contentment in what I do. And so, this idea of self inquiry is a way of being where instead of being rigid and instead of saying, oh, this is just the way it is, you're curious like a kid. You're asking questions like, I wonder if it'd be possible for me to do this or do that or try something different. It kind of ties in with that experimentation aspect. And you can use self inquiry in any part of your life, your finances, your personal relationships, your nutrition, your taking care of your health and wellness. So it's not just about teaching yoga. Number four, and remember there are six. Number four is meditation. Having time every day when you are in silence with your eyes closed, sitting down, taking deep breaths. Just, we're sort of beyond the stage where we're making excuses for not meditating, right? Like we're sort of beyond that. Everybody has an excuse for why they don't meditate, but the bottom line is the science shows meditation is great for your health. And so we just want to move past the excuses and just agree that meditating every day is a good thing. And I'm saying that from the point of view of somebody who doesn't meditate every day, because I get very wrapped up in my to-do list. But I totally know that meditating every day is something I aspire to because it is so beneficial. So I don't need to go into that one more. I know you know what I'm talking about there. Number five, though, is something you might not have heard about, which is sort of related to meditation, and it's visualization. Visualization is something I do every morning before I even get out of bed. I have a vision in my mind of what I hope to achieve, a larger goal, a broader goal. It could be something for the month, for the year. Most of the time it's related to my work as a yoga teacher, although sometimes it could be related to something else, like a place I want to vacation or something I'm saving my money for. I don't know, something different from yoga. But most of the time it is related to the work I do as a yoga teacher. And I see it in really bold color. I see it in a lot of detail. So, right now for you, what would be something that you would visualize? Like, what's the first thing that pops into your brain? What would be something that you would visualize yourself doing or being? Could be teaching related, maybe not. Is there something that comes to mind? So that's what you can experiment with over the next couple of days. Before you even set your feet on the floor, spend some time laying in bed, eyes open, and or maybe eyes closed, but you're awake, and feed that visualization and make visualizing things. When we're a kid, we call it daydreaming. When we're an adult, we call it visualization. But there has been a lot of science behind this, and you'll probably hear from a lot of really well-known podcasters these ideas around visualizing and how the brain really can't delineate between what you're imagining and what's really happening. And so there's a lot of, experts in this area that speak about the value of visualization as sort of a jumpstart to building the neural pathways in your brain. And I think I've even heard people talk about the neuroplastic effect of even just visualizing something versus thinking you have to actually do it. So this is really relevant for you if you want to do certain things in your classes that you feel you can't do now. Like a simple example is you want to do the walk and talk more than the practice with me approach. Well, every morning before you get out of bed, visualize yourself teaching using the walk and talk method. How are you doing it? Where are you in the room? What are you wearing? What are you saying? How are you holding your arms, with respect to your body? Where are you walking around? What's the distance between you and the students? What do you see? Start to visualize it. Make that vision crystal clear in your brain, in your mind. And then the last one is healthy habits. Now, healthy habits is a really broad topic, and I certainly have a whole bunch of, I think of healthy habits around things like nutrition, exercise, self-talk, community, personal relationships, finance. I mean, there are so many healthy habits within each one of those buckets we can get into. I mean, even just one example I'll give you on the finance side, which I know you might think, hey, this is a yoga podcast. Why are we talking about money? But we're talking about money because money is part of our life. And so if we don't talk about certain things that are part of life, that's how problems arise. They're problems of avoidance. So a perfect example is, if you have something in your money landscape that you know you need to deal with and you're ignoring it, that is an unhealthy habit. So, a perfect example of this, and one that might come to mind, is debt. If you're carrying what you consider a lot of debt and you're not doing anything proactively to chip away at that debt, that is a source, I'm sure, because I've been there too, of of stress and maybe fear. And so part of a healthy habit, or one of the healthy habits to begin to build, is a better relationship between you and your money. And as you develop that better relationship between you and your money with respect to the debt, by taking right action to eliminate that debt, you will start to shift how you handle your money, especially as it relates to building up debt. Once you pay off that debt, you won't carry your credit cards around with you. Or once you pay off that debt, maybe you carry your credit cards with you, but you are more mindful about using them. Maybe you're just more mindful about what you're buying. So this is all, in this area of healthy habits. But healthy habits can be something as simple as every morning I go for a walk and I listen to a podcast at the same time that feeds my soul, right? Healthy habits can be getting to bed early. Healthy habit can be starting a hobby. I just started painting and I haven't painted in years and I'm absolutely loving it. So now a couple of nights a week, I pull out my watercolors and I paint, and I absolutely love it. And that is a healthy habit because it feeds my mind, it builds dexterity and attention to detail, and it's something I enjoy. I mean, we don't always have to look at things through the lens of science, but that's just how I tend to look at things. But even just from a heart-centered perspective, doing things that you love and doing them regularly. One of the best healthy habits that I developed over the past couple of years, and this has been well documented to have a benefit on your body, is to take a 10-minute walk after dinner. So I always walk the dog after I have my dinner, and it's a great way to help you digest your food, help you lower your blood sugar. So again, there's lots of healthy habits. What comes up for you when you think about the top 5 healthy habits that you want more of in your life? So again, we've got confidence in the center of the circle, and then around we have the 6 spokes of the wheel. That is the confidence practice. Number 1 is yoga and daily movement. Number 2 is experimenting through daily challenges. Number 3 is self-inquiry. Number 4 is meditation. Number 5 is visualization. And number 6 is healthy habits. So all with that, you're now armed with sort of a framework for helping you build your confidence. But how do you take it and actually put it into action? Well, I've got you covered there, because when you go to the show notes for this episode, you will see my 5-day confidence challenge, which is a free self-guided experience. You can download the PDF and it will walk you through a 5-day experience you can do. And everything in it for every single day is designed around helping you feel more confident. And it's connected to a lot of the things we talked about in this episode, in this conversation. So it's a really good thing to do right after you listen to this episode. Get going, get that download, post it in your house, and do this over the next 5 days, this confidence challenge. And then send me a direct message and let me know how you feel at the end of it. I'd love, love, love to hear. Now, the last question I have for you is, this entire framework is something I created in January of this year, 2025. And I've been toying with the idea of doing a free workshop to blow out all these concepts even more, and then turn this into a really short self-guided online course filled with a whole bunch more on each of these areas. I'd love to know if that's something you're interested in. So if it is, just send me a DM on Instagram and let me know that it would be something that you're interested in. I'm taking sort of an informal poll. So that brings us to the end of today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to thank you so much for listening. And don't be a stranger. Please send me a DM on Instagram and just even let me know that you listened, because I'm here talking in the void. And I'd love to know that real life humans are listening to this. I know you are. I mean, I know people are, but it's always really nice to hear anything back, just as a way to find out how you're receiving the content I'm putting out there. Thank you so, so much, and I'll talk to you on the next episode. Namaste. Thanks for being here with me today. I hope you enjoyed the episode. And hey, one more thing. While I don't know you personally, I know what a yoga teacher looks like who's ready to have a breakthrough to being the kind of yoga teacher who walks around the room, sharing cues you know the reason for, understands anatomy, teaching signature sequences without notes or any need to practice with class, and loves teaching yoga without stress, anxiety, or nervousness. If you are ready to be that yoga teacher, here is your next step. DM me the words podcast offer, and I will give you a special incentive to work with me inside of my signature program just because you are listening to the podcast. DM me on Instagram at Bare Bones Yoga. I can't wait to hear from you.